So, welcome to Community Viewpoint. I'm John Pollock, your host for this segment. And as you can see, we're not at the station today. We're out in the field. We're at Valley Electric office on 372, and we're going to be tackling some issues that have come up lately, and they won't go away. And I have the person to talk to today. I've collared Mark Stellans, the CEO from Valley Electric, and I'll introduce him in just a second. So here's Mark, and welcome, Mark. And you've been here in Pahrump with Valley Electric for how many years?
3 years.
3 years. And does
Goes
it get
quick.
And does it get any better?
Yeah, yes, it is. I mean, we're in challenging times.
Yes.
As a world, as a nation, the West markets, the coast, but quite frankly, worldwide, we're in challenging times. So
No, understood.
it just is what it is. Even if I was at a co-op in the Midwest, I would still be seeing these pressures, these cost pressures. It doesn't matter whether I'm in Nevada, South Carolina, New England, Illinois, Kentucky, Kansas, Texas. We're all seeing the same pressures. I just had a phone conversation with a friend of mine down in South Carolina who's seeing the same similar rate increase pressures, but it's nationwide and it's also worldwide.
Okay, what started the ball rolling, so to speak? I got an email from Valley Electric, and I'm sure all the other rate members, people have got them too. It was a caution conservation alert well, tell us what it was about.
Yeah, what was driving this? It was typically there's two different types of conservation alerts. One I would classify as a reliability conservation alert, meaning that the supply of power, electricity, energy is short compared to demand for electricity in any given hour. And that is similar to what we've seen in the August, September timeframe.
That's what it reminded me of. Right when I saw that, I says, this is just the opposite of that.
But this is different. This is a little different.
Okay.
And that would be a reliability conservation alert, meaning that we need people to conserve their energy usage so that the demand for energy balances or meets the supply. And typically, we're talking 45, 50 gigawatts of supply and 45, 50 gigawatts of demand. The market's way up at its high end in terms of usage. A week ago, last week, basically, cold temperatures, cold weather, but the supply of energy was in the 40 gigawatt range, 40 plus, and the demand for energy was in the high 20s. So we had 10, 11, 12 gigawatts of energy excess. We had tons of energy available, but what we didn't have was natural gas supply.
Okay.
And we had not seen this. We had not seen it at all. This was the first time we've seen it in my 3 years here at Valley. It's the first time in my career that I've seen it, and I've been in Illinois, Michigan, Kentucky. I hadn't seen it at any of those places. And there's basically two major pipelines that come out of the El Paso, Texas area, and they basically feed the western, southwestern, and western markets with natural gas. And one of those pipelines has been derated to a lower capacity, and we are hitting, because of the cold weather, because of gas heating load, and then electric gas generation. And roughly the western markets, we're 50% natural gas. And so when Valley buys, on a peak day, we'll be buying in the market, that market power is 50% natural gas. Now, we do not have a natural gas contract with a generator,
Right.
but for that excess power above what our contract power is, we're in the marketplace. And that's typically, when the sun goes down, it's typically natural gas power supplied.
So we have to understand with the people out here that we don't have any natural gas out here, but yes, we
Yeah.
do. We use propane, which is rather expensive. The pipelines are in Vegas and other places, but the electricity we use is generated by plants that use the natural gas.
Yeah, natural gas turbines. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And so the price of natural gas hit an all-time high that I'm aware of. It was in the $40 per MMBTU, which probably doesn't matter to the normal person what that is. Just remember $40. The normal price of natural gas for the last year has been in the $4 to $9 range. This was $40 range. If I
Wow,
go
yeah.
back, if I go back 2 years ago,
Mhm.
the price for natural gas would have been in the $1.95 at the low end in the spring and in the fall. On the high end, it would have been $3.50. But in the last 2 years, we've seen natural gas flip from a North America product where the supply in Canada, Mexico, and the U.S. served Canada,
Right.
U.S., and New Mexico. And our market was those three nations, and the supply demand was driven by those three nations. With the advent of LNG, liquefied natural gas terminals on the East Coast and on the West Coast, as a nation and as a North America market, we are now shipping natural gas to Europe, and we're shipping natural gas from Pacific ports to Asia. And a large percentage of our supply in the North American market is now going overseas. The overseas price of natural gas is much higher.
There's more profit over there.
Yes, in fact, there's so much profit that you can spend money and build a liquefied
Right.
terminal, natural gas, LNG, liquefied natural gas terminal. You can spend millions of dollars, build that terminal, compress the natural gas into a liquid, put it in a ship, and ship it across the ocean and sell it and make money.
Wow.
Okay.
Since you put it that way, that's a little bit easier to understand.
So that's totally, completely
That throws us.
changed the natural gas price market. And
Oh,
that
my God.
that has happened in the last 2 years,
Okay.
2.5 years. So whenever we as people started seeing natural gas prices go up, the exports were going up. And I don't see that changing. So what happens in Europe now affects our natural gas price here in Nevada.
Yes.
What happens on the West Coast, what happens in the East Coast, what happens in the Midwest affects our natural gas price. So when it gets super cold and a lot of natural gas is being used to heat homes, that means the price of natural gas used to generate electricity just went up.
Mhm.
And so we're in the market, we're buying some of that power, our prices go up. So it was an economic decision, not a reliability decision. So we sent the notice out just
Right.
to say, hey, prices are sky high. And I think I don't remember if we quoted the $40 natural gas price or not.
No, I didn't see that in here. No.
But it was driven by the price of natural gas affecting the price of power supply. And so we were seeing power supply prices in the $500 a megawatt hour range, which is 50 cents a kilowatt hour. So we were buying power
Wow.
at 50 cents a kilowatt
Okay.
hour and turning around and selling it to our members at 11.956
Right.
cents a kilowatt
Right.
hour. So there's just, I mean, we were losing money with every energy sale. Now, we're not in business to make money, but we're not in business
To be
to lose all that, because ultimately
Right.
what that means is we've got we've got to go get that money from our members at some point in the future.
And that's coming up shortly.
Yeah, so we wanted to send out a conservation alert that says, hey, help us manage this.
In the short term.
Yep.
Because that was staring us in this past weekend was staring us in the face. And I lived through that too, because I was talking to you a little bit before this about my heat pump not being able to keep up on the coldest weather.
Right.
And this afternoon it's keeping up very well, but it's 40, 50 degrees out there. So
Yeah, depending upon the age of a heat pump or
They're
the
older.
efficiency, they're all different.
22 years old, yeah.
Yeah, newer heat pumps are going to be much more efficient, and
That's what I've been reading too.
they've got a lower temperature where they can extract heat out of the air at a lower temperature than what the older ones used to do. So, that's just kind of the way the heat pump works. And typically out here in the West in Nevada, we don't have to worry about 17 degrees or super cold weather, but here we are.
Yes, and the weather's been changing, and not for the better, unfortunately. So that's what happened this past week, and the email was sent out to everyone, and winter conservation alerts, and that's on our webpage here also. And also, we're going to be looking at a little bit something else that's a little bit more pressing and depressing. There was an article in the Front Valley Times.
Correct.
Friday, December 16th, page A6. For everyone who wants to look at that, I've got it here with me today. It's a full page ad. It's very inclusive of everything that's we have to know, plus I printed it out also. So if we want to get started on that, what's happening? What is this telling us?
Yeah, it's a
new day coming.
Yeah, it's a new day that's been in preparation for 15 to 20 years. I basically say we're transitioning from a energy economy into a green energy marketplace, but it's also complicated by other factors. The natural gas market that I just talked about here in the last few minutes, transitioning from a North American price point to a world price point due to LNG terminals and exports of natural gas. That's changed energy pricing. And so probably on that full page ad, there was a graph that talked about the cost of power, and it laid out what our 2019 power supply budget was, and it was $36.8 million.
Right.
And when we look at our 23 budget, which we just finished putting together, it's 56.3 million, not quite 20 million, but just to keep the numbers simple and round, it's roughly $20 million increase in power supply.
Okay, we're going to go into the second portion. That was my stopwatch, if you heard that. We'll be right back. And welcome once again to Community Viewpoint. This is the second segment, and we're here with Mark from our CEO from Valley Electric, and I will turn the camera around so we can look at him and rather than me. So let's continue with the discussion. We're back with Mark Stellans from Valley Electric, our CEO, and we're talking about, what were we talking about?
We were talking about cost of power in the last 4 years.
Yes, and where we're going.
Yeah, where it's going. Power supply costs for Valley Electric have gone from roughly 37 million up to 56 million, roughly 19 or 20 million. That is a huge percentage increase in the power supply budget, over 50%. So we started looking at what power supply looks like nationwide, and we came up with a graph from the U.S. Energy Information Administration. That was in the article as well. It was on the top of the article. And basically what it showed is power supply costs across the United States are going up anywhere from 30% up to 62%. And everybody's seeing the same thing. And it goes back to the natural gas talk we were talking about earlier on the first phase of the discussion we had. But it's also driven by capacity prices, demand for energy. That the demand charge used to be set by a natural gas turbine. Today it's set by a battery energy storage system. So it used to be $3. It's now 10, 11, 12 bucks. So we're just seeing changes in everything.
So we're not going to have some backup with the hydroelectric power anymore either.
Well, that's a good question, and let me give you a little more detail on that. We all know the Colorado River is shrinking, right?
Yes.
And I was in a meeting here at the end of September where they gave us a 5-year forecast. So I took that forecast and gave it to my power supply people and had them crank it in a 5-year power supply forecast. And so what we're seeing with hydro is that it's slowly declining.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, 2022, about 20% of our power supply, 20% of our energy came from hydro.
Right.
In 2023, it's going to be 16%.
Mm-hmm.
So the price is going up as well. So as the volume goes down, the fixed cost to generate the energy still stays the same. You've just got less water, so you're going to get less power. And so the volume of kilowatt hours or energy coming out of that hydro plant's dropping.
Yes.
But the cost to produce the energy is still what it always was. So the price per megawatt hour is going up. Over the next 5 years, they forecast that price to go up 50%.
Ooh, okay.
Now we have 4 contracts, 2 with Hoover Dam,
Mm-hmm.
1 with Parker Davis Dam, and 1 with the Salt Lake City project.
I hadn't thought about Parker. With them also? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Valley Electric has 4 contracts out to the 2060 time frame. But let's be real. If we're getting hydropower in 2060, thank God.
Yeah.
And we're probably not going to have it. The contract is going to outlive the volume in the river.
Oh, we see no turnaround for it getting better.
We had a lot of rain last year, but it didn't
make
seem to change the pool depth.
Yeah.
The other thing I discovered in that meeting, they talked about the river. We're roughly at 1,020 feet. Where 920 is the footage where there's no more hydro power.
Right.
So we're about 100 feet away. Well, nobody really knows exactly when are we going to be at 920. 3 years, 4 years, 10 years? We don't know. So that 50% increase in price was an estimate based upon how fast the experts think it's going to decline. But the only thing I know about a forecast is it never works that the forecast is exactly right?
So I'm not one of the people that don't want growth at all, but I've lived here for 20 years. We've grown in Pahrump at a regular pace, I guess, along with the economy. We have spurts, and in like 2008, 2009, it just, the bottom fell out, then we recovered. Now we're building once again. Same thing with Las Vegas, and they're building and building even though they know there's a problem with the water. And basically Las Vegas should have never been there because it's in the middle of the desert.
Yeah, it's a challenge.
But they're still building. There's no logic to that in some cases, because I've been here since actually 1989, and I would travel to Pahrump because I bought some property with preferred equities, and I still have that property.
Yeah.
But I would travel down 160 when it was 2 lanes, and then I would come down Charleston Boulevard, and each year when I would come out here, I would see the progress, the growth as it moved towards Red Rock Canyon. Now it's at the doorstep of Red Rock Canyon, and now it's going to be on top of the gypsum mine.
Yes.
There'll be a community up there. So we shouldn't be out here.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting, you know, I learned years ago that human beings, we like to think we're logical, but
It's not logical.
when we go back and look at everything we do and how we do it, it's pretty hard to prove that we're logical.
Well,
We love to live out here in the sun and the humidity and
I
the
don't like
warm
the
weather.
That's why I'm not in Chicago anymore. I worked in a steel mill all my life,
Yeah.
and it was just miserable in the wintertime.
They've got plenty of water back in Chicago, but you got to take that 20 inches of snow with it.
I know, but they're just. I wasn't prepared for the drought that we've been in for so many years. No one could predict that. They also predicted we had a lot more water underneath us at the time too, which was a fallacy. It was not the third largest aquifer.
Yeah, I mean the growth has been been a very valuable thing to have. There's a lot of electric co-ops that are seeing no growth, and Valley Electric is one of those electric co-ops that is seeing growth.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're growing at about 400 to 500 meters a year, which is somewhere close to 2% growth. We'll vary from 1.6 growth in a month up to 2.5, 2.8, and it just varies. But that is a nice percentage growth. But the unusual thing is with that growth, you would expect our kilowatt hour sales are going up. Our kilowatt hour sales, our energy sales are flat. And the reason they're flat is there's a lot of solar going in on rooftops.
Okay. Yeah.
So, but what's happening is the growth in the meters is offsetting the solar shift. And so we're staying flat. Otherwise, our sales would be dropping, which would be a very difficult thing because your cost of distributing energy stays the same, but if your sales volume's dropping, that's going to drive your rates up. So when I see people moving in here, I smile because I know it helps Valley keep our rates as stable as we can if possible. But the power supply pressures are going to be with us for a number of years, just the hydro pressures alone. But the other pressure is transmission charges. Transmission charges are going up 15 to 20% a year for 2 years in a row now.
Gosh. Yeah.
And that's just the build out to serve renewable energy resources that are replacing coal, and the nuclear plant has been extended to live a few more years longer, mainly because we don't have enough storage in place yet
Exactly.
to let it retire.
Right.
And so solar really, we've got enough solar, but we don't have enough storage. Storage is the big key here. And so Valley's looking at storage systems as well.
I understand that. Yeah, that's enough for another.
Oh yeah, that's another topic all
Yes.
by itself.
Well, here's the important thing while we're here today too. What happens at January 1st?
January 1st, rates will be going up. It's a 2.5 cent rate increase. It's about 17.2% if I remember my math right. It's all in the news article.
Right.
It's about $32 a month. It's on the energy charge going from, I probably ought to look here and make sure I get my numbers right, 11.956 cents on a residential up to 14.5
Right.
cents. And that's going to bring in the revenue Valley needs to keep our bankers happy.
And there was a question on the things that I downloaded is this permanent?
Yes, yeah. I mean,
Is this rate adjustment permanent?
Yeah. It's permanent unless there's a change in the power supply drivers. But to be honest and upfront with you, I don't see that. I don't see a change coming that's going to decrease rates. Most of the change is driving prices upward.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I probably need to talk about is we're also looking at restructuring how our rates, and I've been talking about this at district meetings.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, for the last year I've been talking about we need to align our rates with the power market, and the reality is the price we buy power changes every 5 to 15 minutes.
Right.
And so we buy at a variable price and we sell at a fixed price.
So you're talking about the time of use rate?
Time of use rate.
Okay.
Yeah. So what we're looking to do is to take that energy rate. It's what's going to be 14.5 cents. And what will happen is from somewhere around 5 o'clock in the afternoon up to 9 or 10 o'clock at night, the rate will be higher than average.
Right.
And the hours outside of that window, the rate will be lower than average.
Right.
Now we needed a year's worth of hourly load data from all of our members before we could figure out what this rate is going to look like, what time of use rates will look like. At the end of this year, we'll have 12 months worth of data.
You need at least something like that, yeah.
Yeah, so we can see what the impact is. But we'll be looking at time of use rates. And then on the large commercial, small commercial, medium commercial, we'll be raising the demand charge and lowering the energy charge.
Okay.
Now that doesn't affect residential. We don't charge demand. Demand
Right,
is the peak usage in a month. What's the peak hour? And we buy capacity in the marketplace for the peak hour usage each month. And so on a residential, we take that capacity cost and we just throw it in with the energy. But
Okay.
on a commercial large power, we actually have a demand charge. But that demand charge has been $3, which is reflective, like I said earlier, of a natural gas turbine. But the driver now is not a natural gas turbine, it's a energy storage, which is more like $10.
Right.
So the demand goes up to the 3 to 10, but the energy comes down, so the total bill stays the same. It's just a restructuring,
Right.
but it'll be within this context of the 14.5 cent
All right,
energy.
we're out of time. I know we could have another segment and then another segment.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, and I'll be back. So.
That's a pleasure talking to you, and I appreciate it.
Yes. Can the people go on the Valley Electric Facebook with questions? There was a couple of questions that the folks had that were on the Facebook page. Is that a way to ask questions, or is it? Do you want it more personal?
I think a more personal is better. I mean, quite frankly, I'd rather sit down and you and I have more of these one-on-ones where we can answer questions. It's hard to give a good answer in a Facebook soundbite. It's usually not adequate, so it's usually better off to do it in this venue. And then we can post this on Valley's website, and you can post it on yours, and we can post it on our Facebook site, and people who want to tune in and listen, they can get a more complete answer in more of a fuller context.
All right, great. Well, we're definitely out of time now. Thank you so much for the time that you've shared with me. And the sun's gone down and we've lost our solar, so the rates are going up right now. So thank you and good evening, folks.